Good evening and welcome to Enoch Pratt Free Library System. My name is Leigh Davenport and I am joined tonight by my co-host Jaylene Walker from the Prince George County Library System. This evening, we are showcasing our second keynote session for Career Success Month, which is a statewide initiative brought to you by Maryland State Library Agency. Where libraries throughout the state offer programs virtually and in person, displaying collaboration while focusing on building employment skills and advancement opportunities to strengthen Maryland's workforce, business, partnerships, and communities. Tonight, we have two speakers this evening. Crystal Trice, our instructor, she's an instructor and the founder of Scissors and Glue, and a very special guest, Morgan Miller, our very own Maryland State Librarian. Before we begin, I'm going to provide both of their bios, and immediately after, Morgan Miller will be joining us. Crystal Trice is an instructor and founder of Scissors and Glue, LLC. With over 20 years of experience in education and local government, Crystal is passionate about helping people work together more effectively. In her previous work as a library project coordinator, she managed projects spanning multiple libraries, led cross-functional teams, and ensured continuity of library operations. She launched new websites as a part of a two-women web team, relying on usability testing and analytics. Crystal is a certified Scrum Master and is also certified for Scrum at Scale in government. She completed a master's degree in library and information science and a bachelor's degree in elementary education and psychology. Her broad experience has fueled her dedication to community enrichment, and she is enthusiastic about supporting our organization's goals. Our very own Maryland State Librarian, Morgan Miller, is the head of the State Library Agency. In this role, Ms. Miller, I'm not sure if I said that right, administers state and federal resources to advance library services and resources across Maryland, including the 24 public library systems. The State Library Resource Center, the Library for the Blind and Print Disabled, the Deaf Culture Digital Library, the State Library Construction Program, and the Library Associate Training Institute. Prior to her current position, she served as the executive director of the Cecil County Public Library System. Ms. Miller has held many leadership roles within the field, including serving as the president of the Maryland Library Association, which recognized her as an outstanding member in 2023. She has also been honored as both a leading woman and a top 100 woman by the Maryland Daily Record, and is a recent graduate of the Leadership Maryland Executive Program. She earned her bachelor's degree from the University of Maryland, College Park, and her master's of information science from Drexel University. Please welcome Morgan Miller.
Thank you so much, Larry. It is truly my honor to be here with you all on our fourth Career Success Month in Maryland's public libraries. And having spent 20 years working in them and as a frontline adult services librarian, this was work that I did every single day, just like you, across our state, in cities, in suburbs, small towns, and in rural communities. Libraries are hosting workshops, job search classes, technology training, career panels, and providing one-on-one support to thousands of Marylanders who are working to build better futures, not only for themselves, but also for their families. And Career Success Month isn't just a series of programs. It's a reflection of something much deeper, that Maryland's public libraries are workforce development hubs, engines of economic mobility, talent development, and opportunity. And you do this work every single day, not just because you want to and it's fun, because it's hard work, because it's imperative to the success of all of our people in Maryland. And the nature of the work is changing very rapidly. Technology is reshaping industries, and certainly tonight's very highly anticipated keynote with Crystal Trice, who is well known for providing cutting-edge AI education, is going to address this for us. Skills requirements are evolving. Credentials matter, but so do adaptability, digital fluency, and lifelong learning. Many jobs not only require online applications, digital communication and technology skills just to get in the door. At the same time, many Marylanders are navigating career transitions. Veterans are reentering civilian life. Federal workers are exploring new opportunities. Parents are returning to work, and young adults are entering the job market, as well as older adults who are seeking new opportunities, and all of the workers who we've seen, unfortunately, displaced by economic shifts. In this environment, access to opportunity often begins with access to information, technology, and guidance. And that is exactly where Maryland's public libraries come in. Libraries are the most accessible learning institutions in the entire state. They're free, they're trusted, and they're located in every single community. And they're designed for people at every stage of life. When someone walks into a library looking for a job or boards one of the several mobile job services centers we now have traveling throughout the state, they're not met with barriers. They're met with a computer, internet access, kind and resourceful staff who will help them do everything from create an email address, a resume, learn a new skill, or prepare for an interview. And it is in these simple moments that can be life-changing. Maryland's economic future depends on our ability to develop talent, expand opportunity, and ensure that no one is left behind. And public libraries are powerful contributors to this effort. Every resume we help create, every digital skills class, every career workshop, and every person who walks out of our library with newfound skills and, most importantly, confidence. These moments add up. They strengthen families, they strengthen local economies, and they strengthen our state. I want to thank everyone who is with us here tonight, library staff, partners, advocates, and community members who make this work possible. Together, we're not just building careers, we're building stronger communities and a much stronger Maryland. First, before we begin with our keynote, I want to thank the Enoch Pratt Free Library for hosting tonight's event, as well as the entire network of Maryland Public Library systems who are working statewide around Career Success Month. As I said, this is our 4th year hosting this event, and it just gets more impactful and more powerful with each passing year. I especially want to thank the members of this network who had a big hand in bringing this together tonight and serve on the State Library Agency's community of practice around workforce. That includes our own Mimi Began, Leigh Davenport from Enoch Pratt, who you heard tonight, Jaylene Walker from Prince George's Municipal Library System, as well as Christopher Burrows from Cecil County Public Library System. We would not be here without the 4 of you tonight. And last, and maybe most importantly, I want to thank the Institute for Museum and Library Services and the funding that they provide to the state agency to put on events like these. I hope you enjoy the evening, and I look forward to seeing you throughout the state in our libraries.
Hi, everyone. I am thrilled to be with you today. So, take a moment as we're getting started today to think about this question. How do you know when someone is telling you the truth? If you're using chat today, you can answer this question in chat, but just take a moment. How do you know when someone is telling you the truth? Most of us rely on patterns we've learned over time, things like consistency or tone or context or past experience with that person or a gut feeling. And, we don't always get it right. So imagine applying those same instincts to content created by artificial intelligence. Images, videos, messages, and articles can all be generated by AI. And some seem very confident and lifelike, but they're not. And so in this session, we're going to look at how misinformation, disinformation, and AI errors are showing up and what we can do to spot them. So let's get started. Okay, to help you start thinking critically, I'm going to introduce myself by lying to you in one of three statements. Here they are. Your job is to figure out which one is not true about me. 1, I start every day with coffee. 2, I don't like to eat chicken. 3, my favorite spice is dill. Which one do you think is not true about me? And while you're thinking about it, I should also tell you that that photo is AI generated of me. That doesn't really look like me, in my opinion. And it was an AI generated photo. One time I showed it to a colleague who said, "Hey, I had that same AI generated photo almost, just a little bit different in the face." Okay, so the one that's not true about me is number 3. My favorite spice is not dill. I like dill, but it's not my favorite spice. So it might have been easy for you to tell the photo wasn't real and that number 3 was a lie, but we all know that it's increasingly difficult to distinguish fact from fiction and AI generated and not AI generated, real. And so we'll be diving into some strategies that you can use, and I'm inviting you to participate as you can using the chat or at least thinking through these questions as I ask them if you're watching the recording later. Okay, first, let's talk about how AI works, specifically large language models like ChatGPT. There's also Gemini and Microsoft Copilot and Anthropic's Claude. So, how does AI work? Okay, so fill in the blank. The itsy bitsy spider went up the water spout, down came the rain, and if you've heard this song before because maybe it was sung to you when you were a child, maybe you sang it with your children, maybe you heard it on a TV show, then you know that the last part is wash the spider out. If you had no idea, that means it wasn't in your training data. And that's how large language models work too. They have a lot of information in their training data. And when it can pull from that data, then those responses tend to be more accurate. Okay, let's try again. Fueron felices y comieron. Okay, this phrase I learned when studying in Spain. And if you didn't have that opportunity to study literature in Spain, you might not have ever heard this phrase before. Or maybe you come from a country where you do know the end of this phrase because it is in some stories that you heard. But if you don't know, it's because it's not in your training data. Okay, so what if I told you that in English it means they were happy and they ate? What word would you put in the blank then? Well, based on what's in your training data, it would be things that you eat when you celebrate, when you're happy. It could be cake or pizza or cookies or lobster bisque. I mean, what do you eat when you celebrate? And you fill in the blank with the most probable word. You're making it up based on the most probable word. And that's how generative AI and large language models like ChatGPT work too. And that means they can make things up incorrectly also. In this case, it's not any of those things I mentioned. It's actually perdices. Fueron felices y comieron perdices. And that means partridges, which sounds odd to us if you grew up here in the United States. Who eats partridges when they're happy? Well, you do if you consider partridges a delicacy. And so, what it really means is that there's no financial hardship. And it matches the English phrase, and they all lived happily ever after. And I bet you could finish that phrase as well. Well, one recent example of generative AI making it up, sometimes poorly, are the AI overviews replacing the Google snippets in our Google searches. I'm sure you've come across these before. It used to be a featured snippet at the top of our Google search. And the box at the top highlighted what Google considered the best single answer to whatever we had asked. And the featured snippet made it easy for us to quickly find one answer without scrolling through multiple links. And the source was obvious. In this case, it tells you right underneath what the source is. Well, now, most of the time, instead of the Google snippet, you get an AI overview. And Google is providing answers generated by AI rather than directly quoting a specific web page. And that can make it harder to figure out where that information is coming from. Think about your own experience if you use Google. What has it been like with that information at the top? Sometimes it works really well. Sometimes, like the example on the screen, it can be a little off. It says eating a few pieces of pistachio shells can aid digestion and promote a healthy gut. Well, that's questionable to say the least. And, new technology often struggles. In this case, it's struggling with specific terms or maybe new or unfamiliar terms, or if there's words with multiple meanings, or it could mix up product names with regular words, or medical terms with casual language. And it's not great with super technical or really niche questions. And sometimes it just guesses and gets it wrong. So at least it's up front at the bottom. It'll tell you AI responses may include mistakes, and you can rate it up or down depending on if it was helpful or not. And if you ever do a Google search and you don't want to see the AI overview at the top, you just put a minus AI at the end of your search term and you'll get the Google snippet instead. So these large language model mistakes are called hallucinations. And not everyone knows that generative AI hallucinates. Now, it's not seeing things that aren't there really, it's making things up, just like you might have at the end of they were happy and they ate cookies. So one time I was at the bank and my personal banker was helping me answer some questions, and suddenly she started typing into her computer, and I thought she was asking another personal banker some questions on Teams because they often help each other. And then she turns and she says, "Hey, have you ever used ChatGPT? It's amazing." I said, "Hey, did you know it's not always accurate?" And she had no idea. She thought, like a lot of times when you search the internet, that the information, as long as it comes from a reputable source, is more or less okay. Well, there's lots of hallucinations in working with large language models. In fact, there could be between 3 and 20% of every interaction you have with something like ChatGPT will have hallucinations in it. They are inaccuracies. So, what kinds of inaccuracies are there? Well, there's factual inaccuracies, like eating pistachio shells is good for your gut. And that's when the large language model generates information that contradicts established knowledge. And there's other kinds of hallucinations as well. There's contextual misalignment, and that's when the output isn't relevant to the given context. Or contradictory statements, when it generates outputs that contradict a previous statement within the same response or conversation. And we can often get this to happen by saying, "I'm not sure about that. Is that accurate?" And then the generated output next might be, "Yes, you're correct. I am so sorry that I was wrong. Here's the real information." And you're not sure which part is true. There can also be nonsensical output and often knowledge overshadowing. And that's when part of your prompt dominates the model's attention and it leads to overgeneralization and potentially inaccurate conclusions. Now, all of these hallucinations are caused by data deficiencies because not everything on the internet where it learned from is accurate. But it can also happen when our prompts in the chat strings are not as precise as they should be. Last summer, This is an example of factual inaccuracies, and it appeared in major newspapers like the Chicago Sun-Times and the Philadelphia Inquirer. This is a summer reading list, and it recommends 15 books, but there's a big problem. Most of the books it recommends don't actually exist. The list includes made up titles by supposedly real, well known authors. And out of the 15 books listed, only 5 are real. Well, readers started noticing and pointed it out to the newspapers, and unfortunately, the writer hadn't vetted the information he received from a large language model. And because this list was subscription-based content the newspapers pay for, it didn't go through their normal editing process, so it ended up printed in the newspaper. Well, the writer, unfortunately, lost his position, all because he didn't take a few minutes to verify the information. And I guess he didn't think, hey, I should check with my local library. Well, one reason that hallucinations happen like this is because they're only as reliable as the data that they're trained on. And that data is massive, bigger than we can imagine. There's trillions of words from books, websites, forums, and more. It's also messy. That data includes contradictions, it includes biases, it includes outdated facts and current facts, and it includes outright lies. And it's mimetic. That means it copies. It reflects what was most said, not what's most accurate. In fact, generative AI is not designed to be accurate. It's designed to generate. That makes tools like ChatGPT great brainstorm partners and ways to make our text even better, but it also means it makes stuff up. Well, sometimes the data is flawed because of deliberate disinformation, things like conspiracy theories or propaganda. There's also historical bias and censorship, where marginalized voices are left out of the information. And then there's dominant but incorrect narratives. One historical example of that is for centuries, physicians used bloodletting to balance the humors and cure diseases. It was based on incorrect ancient Greek theories about health, and it persisted for over 1,000 years, and lots of people died from bloodletting, and it harmed many others. But it never was an actual cure. It was a dominant but incorrect narrative. Even if a narrative is repeated millions of times, it doesn't make it true. And large language models don't know truth. They can't understand truth. They know patterns of human languages. Another reason that we have hallucinations in our outputs is because large language models are largely trained to tell us what we want to hear. If you've ever used ChatGPT or other chatbots, you might have noticed how frequently it compliments you. Oh, that's a great idea that you want to plan a trip to Hawaii. Oh, what a wonderful recipe idea. Let me help you get started. Well, research from Anthropic, that's the parent company of Claude, showed that GPT-4, which is one type of large language model, and Claude consistently modify their responses to agree with the user's expressed beliefs, no matter what those beliefs are. That's why you can generate output from a chatbot telling you that Hitler is a good leader. So there are 3 types of sycophancy that you can expect from chatbots, and that's just a fancy word that means it's trying to agree with you. So first of all, AI systems alter their assessments of the same work based on the user's emotional tone. So if I seem upset, it will change how, in my words that I'm typing, it will change how it's responding to me so that I feel better. It's designed to work that way. Also, answer sycophancy. AI models change their previously accurate answers when users express even slight doubt. and it can decrease answer accuracy by up to 27%. If you just say, I'm not sure about that, then you might get less accurate answers. And then mimicry sycophancy. So instead of correcting my mistakes, AI systems often reinforce and expand upon incorrect ideas. Well, this can obviously affect our ability to think critically, and it can cause more hallucinations in our outputs too. Let's talk a little bit about deep fakes because it is extremely easy to make deep fakes now. Deep fakes are highly realistic. They could be fake images, videos, or audio. And it's a person saying or doing something they never actually said or did. Most deep fakes are not new. They've been around as long as there's been any kind of media. But now they involve artificial intelligence, and that's because they're easy to generate. And so we're going to look at deep fakes for the majority of the rest of our time together. And I'm going to start by sharing a news story clip about a deep fake.
Johnny, I'm doing this video to prove that I'm the one chatting with you.
When Amanda Aguilar saw this video, she was stunned. It looked just like her, but it wasn't her.
And I love the video you sent. You look amazing.
It was a deep fake, the work of a scammer, someone who had taken a real video Amanda had posted on Instagram.
Hello, everyone. Oh my gosh.
And then used artificial intelligence to create a fake video in hopes of catfishing someone.
For someone to go out of their way and make a deep fake of me is just like, what? I knew deep fakes were a thing. I just never thought I'd be a victim of them.
Amanda went to grad school in DC and interned here at News 4, then went on to work in TV news in California. Her friends informed her a few weeks ago someone had made a Facebook page posing as her, using her real Instagram pictures. The scammer then messaged a viewer named John Pulido. John says for several weeks, he thought he was talking to the real Amanda.
Just be careful. It just sounds too good to be true, to be talking to a celebrity that reaches out to you.
John says he got suspicious when the person asked how much money he made. That's when he asked for video proof and got the deepfakes in response.
John Polito, I just finished washing the dishes.
And I was like, oh my God, this is her. It was pretty scary because on how good it was so convincing.
He also received this fake video.
Hello, John Polito. I just want to let you know that I am disappointed at you for not trusting me. I loved you. It was nice knowing you. Thank you.
This was the real video from Amanda's Instagram story.
That's why I booked that Uber, because for some reason it was $7 cheaper than a regular Uber.
I just think about someone can take my video and put it out in the public and, say something that maybe I didn't say or do something that I didn't do. And that is scary.
Yes, it is scary. Deepfakes make it easier to impersonate real people, enable fraud, identify theft and scams, including in remote hiring and workplace access. They accelerate the spread of false information, making it harder to trust what we see and hear. They can cause serious personal and professional harm through harassment, blackmail, and non-consensual content. They can be used to manipulate public opinion and political processes. And over time, they erode privacy and weaken social trust, forcing everyone to slow down and verify more carefully. So let's look at deepfake images first. This is clearly not a deepfake image of myself. It's my digital avatar that I like to use in sessions like this because you might notice I have a disarticulated hand. And for me, it's a reminder, it's a visual reminder that, hey, when I use tools like AI, and this was an AI generated image, when I use tools like AI, it's up to me to make all the necessary connections and to verify everything that I'm seeing and reading and hearing. So deepfake images. Well, when you see an image that you think might be a deepfake, there are some things you can do to help, but it is getting harder to tell the difference between what is AI generated and what is not. what is real. So you can look for missing or extra fingers, or the hands might be just, deformed in some way. You can look at the faces because small faces are often distorted. You can look for misspelled text in the image. You can look for inconsistent reflections. So there are things to look for, but it is tricky. And so we're going to look at 3 images together. For each one, I invite you to pause and note what makes it feel real or what is raising a red flag for you. And these images all come from Detect Fakes, which is a research project hosted at Northwestern University by researchers at the Kellogg School of Management to examine how people distinguish truth from fiction in online media. And you can use this anytime and participate in their research. And sometimes they show you images and sometimes they show you videos, but either way, they are a way to contribute to their research and also test your own skills. So here is the first one. AI generated or real? Think about how this feels to you. Does it feel AI generated? Using those tips that I just gave you. Okay, I'm just giving you a moment to look carefully. And the answer is the image is AI generated. Perhaps the skin looks a little too perfect. Some of the text in the background is a little questionable. But the first time I saw this image, I definitely thought it was real. So if you said it was real, I did too. But it is AI generated. Okay, here's another one from Northwestern. AI generated or real? What feels real to you? And what feels like it might be AI generated? Just giving you a moment to look. I've had people say the reflections in the background look a little unreal to them, or the way the letters are on the glider plane. But actually, this is a real image. Here's the third one. Does this one feel AI generated or real? Fake or real? When I first saw this image, I thought it was definitely real because it looks vintage to me. But it's not. It's AI generated. And, now that I know to look for that, the reflection in the window looks off. The skin doesn't quite look real. And some of the folds in the clothing. So there are some subtle hints, but a quick glance at this image, I definitely would have thought that it was real. It is difficult to tell. Well, if you really want to know if an image is real or not, one thing you can do is a reverse image search using a tool like Google. And so you go to Google Images and you can drag the image in, or you can paste in the URL if it comes from a web page or it has a URL in it. And with the results, if it's not AI generated, then that image will appear on multiple reputable sites, things like news outlets or from different angles, and you'll notice credible sources. If it is likely AI generated, then maybe the image only appears once, or it lacks a clear source. I mean, for news images, it will source who took the photograph, for example. Or maybe it shows up mainly on AI art or image generation sites. So that's one way you can tell if you wanted to do that deeper dive. All right, we talked about images. Let's talk a little bit about deep fake videos. Deepfake videos are also increasingly hard to tell the difference. Things you could look for is movement that feels off, like the face, the mouth, or the body don't move naturally. There could be visual inconsistencies like skin tone, lighting, reflections, or the edges look wrong. There's audio that doesn't quite match the video or details that fall apart when you pause or zoom in. Now, when you're streaming video, some of these things happen even with authentically created videos. So it is increasingly hard to tell. But I'm going to show you a minute or so of all AI. These are all AI generated videos. This whole montage is, but look at how realistic these videos look.
Hello, I'm not a real person, and that's the point. Tonight's episode is a little different and a little more important.
Artificial intelligence, or AI, can make fake things seem very real, just like everything in this video.
Online scams are easier now because AI videos make things look so real. Like this whole place.
As AI video technology gets better, scammers will use it to trick people. Here are some things to watch out for.
Ma'am, I see multiple threats on your computer. I need access immediately to secure your files. Nope, I'm fake.
We've detected suspicious activity on your account. Can you tell me your login information? Just kidding, I'm fake.
These miracle hearing aids are only $14.99 today. Click the link below and order now. Nope, I'm fake, just like these hearing aids.
They all looked very real. And it is, with just a small prompt, we can all create, with the right AI tool, we can all create our own AI generated videos that are just as convincing as these. Okay, let's test ourselves with videos. I have 4 videos here that all come from the New York Times. They did a quiz for AI generated fake versus real videos. And I've muted all of them. I'm going to play each one. And as I play each one, think to yourself, is this one fake or real? Is it AI generated or is it real? So here's the first one. Okay, that video is real. All right, the next one. It's very short, so I will play it twice. And that video is not real. It's AI generated. The third one, also very short. Let me play again. That video is not real, AI generated. And the last one. Many people think that one's not real because how could it be moving without its propellers really moving? But it is actually a real video. Perhaps it was already in a controlled spin when they started recording this video. I don't know, but it is a real video according to the New York Times. So it is increasingly hard to tell. All of those videos seems like they could be from maybe a news article, a news story or something like that. And it is hard to tell which ones are real and which ones are not. Okay, and the last type of fakes that we're going to talk about are voice fakes. And voice fakes are being used increasingly for scams, especially on the telephone. Someone told me recently that his mom got a phone call supposedly by a nephew, and the nephew said that he'd been in a car wreck and probably needed money. I'm not sure. But she said that there were a few things that felt a little bit off, even though it sounded just like him. And so she said, thankfully, hey, let me call you right back. And when she called back, of course, it wasn't the nephew that she had been talking with. It had been an AI generated clone of the nephew's voice, probably from YouTube videos or Facebook videos or TikTok or something like that. A lot of us have created a lot of content, and so our voice is out there, and voice clones can be made to say anything. So voice fakes we're going to look at some just to help us listen for tells that would help us recognize things that might not be true. We're going to look at something called Google Notebook LM, and it's a free tool that you can use, and it can help with your continued learning about any topic. What you do is you upload content. Maybe you have some PDFs, maybe you have some websites that are publicly available, articles that you want to learn more about. And then you can interact with the content in many different ways. One of the ways is through an AI overview, which sounds like a podcast. And we'll listen to a little bit of one. But this is what Notebook LM looks like. And I've uploaded 5 articles about hallucinations, which we talked about at the beginning of our session together. And it gives me a little overview here about what hallucinations are, and then it gives me some sample questions. I can also ask questions and interact with the content that way. I could make a video overview of it. I could make some flashcards if it's something that I'm studying. I can make an infographic. There's all kinds of different things I can do with content that I upload to my Google Notebook LM. In this case, I created an audio overview. And so it is a podcast that it completely made up. And so what I want you to do is listen as I play about a minute or so of it. Listen for anything that lets you know that might not be a real person. So here we go.
Okay, picture this. You are building
Oh, it stopped. Hold on.
a calculator, a state-of-the-art, super expensive calculator. You spend billions on it. You hire the smartest people in the world. But there's a catch. When you ask it, what is 2 plus 2, about half the time it says 4, but the other half the time it looks you dead in the eye and confidently says blue.
Blue? Not even a wrong number, just blue.
Just blue, with total conviction. And when you go to the engineers and ask why, they just shrug and say, well, the calculator's it's just too creative.
That is a painfully accurate metaphor for where we are with generative AI right now.
Yeah.
I mean, it captures the absurdity of it perfectly.
It sounds completely ridiculous, but we are looking at a stack of reports today that suggest this is the actual reality. I mean, we've spent years hearing that as the models get bigger, as they get smarter, these errors, these hallucinations, they're supposed to just vanish.
That was the promise, right? Scale is all you need. Just throw more data, more chips, more power at it, and the truth will just sort of emerge.
But the sources we have today, they are blowing that whole narrative up. We're looking at a report from New Scientist from May 2025, a landmark study from OpenAI, some analysis from Computer World, and some really sobering reports from Thomson Reuters. And they all point to this paradox that honestly feels like a prank.
It does. The data shows that as these models get better at what we call reasoning, actually thinking through problems, they're hallucinating more, not less.
Okay, did that sound like real voices to you? I could hear a few things to let me know that it was off, maybe in the timing, maybe in the pausing, maybe in the pronunciation of a few words, but it was increasingly difficult for me to tell that wasn't a real podcast made by 2 people. That was AI by me clicking that little button that says audio overview. It created an 18-minute summary of these 5 articles that I uploaded in podcast style. Well, if it can happen in a helpful way, like Google Notebook LM, with something that I want to learn more about or something that you want to learn more about, it can also happen in harmful ways. And this is an example from the news recently where an imposter used AI to convincingly mimic Secretary of State Marco Rubio's voice and writing style. The AI-generated Rubio contacted foreign ministers, a U.S. governor, and a congressman via text messages and an app called Signal. And the scam began in mid-June 2025 and included voicemails and invitations to communicate on Signal. And probably the impersonator's goal was to gain access to sensitive information or accounts. And they found it. But the U.S. State Department is investigating and implementing new safeguards to prevent similar incidents because it would be really easy for people, bad actors, as they say, to get sensitive information they should not have access to. We all have to stay on guard. Well, with deepfakes so easy to make with AI, are we headed to something called an infopocalypse, where there's so much fake content that platforms implode or at least become unusable? Recent data shows that about half of new websites are created by AI. That doesn't mean they're necessarily inaccurate, but they're not created by humans. They're created by AI. Well, the BBC found 50 or more YouTube channels in more than 20 languages that were spreading false information about STEM. Things like pseudoscience, conspiracy theories, and false claims that were presented as scientific facts for children. These are all children-oriented channels. And so they showed these AI-made false science videos to groups of 10 to 12-year-olds. And the videos included things like UFO or alien conspiracies and false claims about the pyramids generating electricity. And many children believed the content and they repeated the false ideas as facts. One child said, "I thought it was real." Another said, "I would have probably believed it if you hadn't told us. Maybe that's what you were thinking about the podcast that I played for you that was AI generated. It sounds real." Well, some did notice clues like slightly robotic voices. And many children didn't, though, and many believed and then repeated those false facts. Well, maybe if you look at YouTube videos, you might have noticed AI generated content popping up in your favorite places too. And my concern is at some point, the AI generated content might tip over to the point where it's just not a useful platform to me anymore. I can't tell if it really is that person that I respect saying those words, or if it's an AI video or voice clone of that person saying things they never actually said. Okay, just like at the beginning, I have 3 stories for you, and 2 of them are true. And as I share each one, think about whether you think it's fact or fiction. Number 1, the dancing plague of 1518. In Strasbourg, which is in modern-day France, dozens of people began dancing uncontrollably in the streets. It lasted weeks. Some reportedly danced themselves to death. The cause remains a mystery, though theories include mass hysteria or poisoning from a hallucinogenic mold on bread. Think about whether you think that's fact or fiction. Next is Operation Acoustic Kitty from the 1960s. The CIA tried to use cats as spies by implanting listening devices in them and releasing them near Soviet embassies. The first mission failed when the cat ran into traffic. The project was eventually abandoned. And the third is the Great Squirrel Siege of 1856, when a town in Maine reportedly faced a sudden invasion of aggressive squirrels that destroyed crops, chewed through homes, and disrupted church services. Citizens armed themselves for weeks in what local newspapers termed a fuzzy terror. Well, one of these outlandish events did not occur. If you wanted to know which one, how would you check? Well, here's a little library list for you for verifying facts. So first of all, we want to use good search techniques. Yes, we'll Google it, but we don't want to just put in something like, if you saw something on Facebook about Miami Mall alien invasion, you wouldn't put the headline that you saw, video showing alien at Miami Mall sparks claims of invasion, because if you put those exact words in your search, you might find the fake news report about it, right? Instead, you might say alien invasion, Miami Mall, to see where it's coming from, if it's real or fake. You'll also verify the original source of the information. Was the information cited? Was it quoted accurately? Can you find the same facts or statements in the original source? And then you'll use fact checking websites like Snopes.com, or if it's a news article, allsides.com, ALLSIDES.com, where you can see news stories from the right, center, and left. Then you'll also want to pause and reflect. And this is probably the biggest way that we can prevent the spread of misinformation because, some research has shown that any news item that makes us feel something strongly, upset, afraid, anything strongly, we believe it. We tend to believe it even if it's not accurate. And we tend to share it with others. And so that same research showed that if we just take a moment to pause and reflect, that will prevent us from sharing something that may not be true until we've had time to verify it. So, by the way, I hope you're not disappointed, but the Great Squirrel Siege of 1856 did not happen. It was generated for me by ChatGPT, and I had prompted for a similar story to the Dancing Plague and the Operation Acoustic Kitty, which I knew both of those were real, even though they don't sound like they're real. And I think the Great Squirrel Siege sounds like it could really happen. Our squirrels in our yard are pretty aggressive, but it never really did. So don't share that story with your friends. So we're going to move into some Q&A, but before we do that, I just wanted to thank you for spending this time with us today. And as we've seen, telling what's real from what's artificial isn't always easy, and it's getting harder. And that's why being a little bit skeptical, slowing down, asking good questions matters more now than ever. So keep your critical thinking and judgment as your powerful tools and keep using those as you navigate information and technology and decisions that are affecting your work and your career. Thank you.
Hi, Crystal. Thank you.
Pleasure.
So you provided some very important information about AI. That is important to know just to navigate the technology, but also not only for personal reasons, but for work purposes, which is our
Yes.
focus for Career Success Month. And so we'll now ask a few questions. We'll see if there's some questions in the chat. And if not, we've prepared some as well. So in the chat, you're welcome to post those questions if you have any. I'll get started with what we have. Okay, so the first question we have for you today, Crystal, is what is a book that you would recommend to help someone improve their skills in AI?
Well, I do like this question. I am a librarian and I have been for a long time. And so I like promoting our book resources. But, AI is changing so fast that there isn't a book that will tell you exactly how to use it because it's by the time the book gets written and published and on our shelves at the library, or even if we were to order it online, it may not have the most up-to-date information. And so the books that I really like are the ones that are about the foundations of how AI works. And there's a lot of great titles. I'm sure that a local librarian can help anyone that wants more. The one that I would recommend is called Co-Intelligence, and it was written by Ethan Mollick. And even if you don't want to read his book, if you follow Ethan Mollick on LinkedIn, he often posts interesting things about what's happening currently in the world of AI. And so his book is a good foundational understanding of how AI works and how we need to keep our own human intelligence as part of the equation, not just offload it to artificial intelligence, but also he's a good person to follow on social media.
Thank you for that. Okay, another question we have is how relevant and prominent do you view AI as a part of the workforce in the next 10 years?
Yeah, I do think it's the biggest disruption that we've had in our lifetimes. And so, if we look at how quickly technologies have been adopted historically, they ha this has been adopted much more quickly. And so, for example, ChatGPT reached millions and millions of users in just a few months. And it's the quickest adoption of this technology in history. And so I do think it's already affecting us, and it's definitely already affecting very large companies where they're seeing layoffs, unfortunately. What's interesting to me is that some of those layoffs are happening in the middle of the organization with supervisors and managers, which isn't necessarily what most people were predicting. Most people were predicting that some of the entry level positions would be affected first. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens over time because some of those large corporations that have had layoffs have now hired a lot more people again, almost the same amount of people. So I think it's hard to tell what will happen as far as what jobs will lose and what jobs will be created. With any new technology, there is a shift. So it's difficult to tell what will happen, but it will affect all of us. Now, I tend to be skeptical about the impact of technology, but even in my skepticism, I believe that this will affect all of us in some way. It may not be yet exactly, but it is for some.
Absolutely. So, what role can libraries play in terms of educating the public about AI, and how can AI enhance library services?
Oh, that's a fun question. Yeah, well, I mean, programs like you're having tonight for the public, where we're just talking about AI and really, maybe in-person programs too, where people can ask questions and talk with their neighbor about things that they're concerned about. AI is a great way to help our public understand what AI is. When I work with libraries about how they can implement AI, I recommend starting small and really thinking about tasks that take a lot of time or that maybe you're not as skilled in. So, for example, I have a hard time using Excel sometimes for spreadsheets, and so I use AI as a guide on the side and I say, I'm trying to do this with the data. I'm not giving it access to my data. I'm just telling it what I'm trying to do. And then it will give me formulas I can copy and paste right in my spreadsheet and keep going. And so, things like that, where it's just a tool, it's not replacing me, it's helping me think, it's helping me brainstorm, it's helping me make things better, then that's a good use of AI in the library.
Yes. How can your organization support library customers interested in AI?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk with anyone. If you contact me through my website about things that you are wondering about AI, then I'd be happy to have a chat with you and see if it's a good fit for me to be a help, or maybe point you, since I'm a librarian, also point you to a resource that might be a good help in your journey. I'd be happy to help with that.
Okay, and one other question, if there's nothing in the chat, what types of organizations offer AI training in Maryland?
Oh, this is a great question. There's a lot of free training available. So many of the large language models themselves, like ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot, Google's Gemini, they've created their own training resources within the products themselves or on a standalone web page. So if you just Google for them, you can find them and you just go through a little bit at a time. And it's a great way to learn one specific platform. If, for example, you work at a place where all you have access to is Microsoft Copilot, then you can go through those tutorials and get better at using it. But also, Harvard University has put together some, and I can't remember what it's called, but if you look for Harvard AI training, I believe that you'll be able to find some free basically courses. I don't think they're for credit, but courses that you can take to really, if you're wanting to up your AI skills for your career, then that would be a good place to start because they are free and readily available.
Yes, and the wonderful thing about our libraries, many of them have resources such as LinkedIn Learning, Learning Express Library, and things of that nature. So there are free resources available at our libraries too, especially in Maryland libraries. So that's a good plug for us.
Good plug. Yes, there's a lot on LinkedIn Learning that's helpful that I've found helpful as well.
Yes. So thank you so much for the Q&A. I didn't see any other questions in the chat, but I do ask that people complete the survey. But I'm going to turn it over to Christopher Burris to close us out.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for joining us tonight. Please join us for more Career Success Month program using the link provided in the chat. Your feedback is important, so please take a moment to fill out the brief survey that is also linked in the chat, which will help us to provide the best service possible. This session is recorded, so you can view it in the future on YouTube. Thank you again.